One of the many magical things of having a partner is that you can delegate the responsibilities of running a household. And there's so much to do. There's cleaning, there's upkeep, there's paying the bills, there's parenting, there is retirement planning. Delegation is a wonderful thing, but in an equal partnership, if you abdicate, there could be danger ahead. Welcome to the show dedicated to helping you not just survive retirement, but to have the confidence, because you're doing the work, to lean in and rock it. I'm losing my breath up here at 7,000 feet. Today on the show, we're starting a month-long series on retirement basics. We're going to cover asset allocation, building energy, fixed annuities, and structured notes, just to build some basic knowledge on various things I'm getting questions about. Today, we're going to talk about what every spouse should know about their retirement plan. This is actually a refresher from a month-long series we did back in 2021, episodes 393 to 397 on non-planners. We're going to have links to that episode in our weekly email, The Noodle, which shares a recap of the show and resources and other things that we're noodling on. If you want to get access to these resources and links, go to thenoodle.me and make sure you're signed up for our weekly email. In addition to that, we're going to have some in the wild stories, people rocking retirement in the wild, and we're trying to get to some of your questions as well. So let's get this party started. It's important for each spouse to delegate responsibilities. That's how we get the job done. But we can't abdicate, especially when it comes to retirement planning. About a month ago, we had an internal retreat with the planners on my team to improve our process. And I asked them, what is most important to you that we should discuss? And Erin on our team, who is awesome, said, hey, I think we need to set the tone of what our expectation is with couples as to the participation level of each spouse. Because generally you have the financial manager spouse that's really into all this, and sometimes you have a spouse that's really not into all this. Sometimes it can be the male, sometimes it can be the female. And so she challenged us on that, and we explored it, and then we came out of that fleshing out what does it mean for us to plant the flag to set that tone with clients. And I'm going to share the beginnings of our protocol that we're implementing. But it led to, well, there's a lot of people that are doing this on their own. What should they do? What should you do to make sure both of you are on the same page, that you're not just taking on all of the responsibility as the planner spouse? So let's set the tone about that. If you're the planner spouse, that is a lot of responsibility and pressure. I've talked to so many people of, yeah, my spouse isn't really involved and I wish he would be, but this is a lot of pressure because I'm the one that has to set the goals. They don't really share them with me. And I have to do all the planning and the allocation. And what if I mess this up? I don't want to have a bad conversation with him because I made a mistake. I wish that he would participate more. There's a lot of pressure in being the planner. And on the non-planner side, there is a risk of having someone else interpret what you want your life to look like, what rocking retirement looks like. I don't care how long you've been married, we all live individual lives, and those lives change based on health and preferences and so forth. And we need to be walking hand in hand with this, but it's best not to have what your life plan looks like be interpreted secondhand. You need to be the voice at the table. So that's why this is so important. And I have countless examples of, usually it's after the fact, dealing with a surviving non-manager spouse that comes to us totally lost. Countless stories of that. After our retreat, Erin shared with the internal team a Loom video of an experience that she had because she volunteers to do tax returns for an organization for retirees. And these Loom videos, which is basically somebody on video, it's great if you are demonstrating something. We use that a lot to communicate internally. And she had tears in her eyes because of an interaction of doing a tax return from someone that lost her spouse. And I asked if I could share it, and she said yes, because I think you need to hear it. So let's play that, and then we'll get to the basics of what delegation but not abdication looks like.
Hey guys, I wanted to record this while it was kind of fresh in my mind. I just got back from volunteering at Tax Aide, which is where we help the seniors and low-income individuals file their taxes. And I had a woman come in today that brought me pretty much every piece of paper she'd gotten in the past month that had a number on it because she didn't know what she's supposed to bring. And she broke down several times because she lost her husband 2 years ago. And since then has also lost both of her brothers. And in her own words, she is lost and she doesn't know what to do. Her husband always handled all of this for her. She doesn't understand how any of this works. She does not have a good grasp on, the accounts that she has even. And it's a really good reminder, like, why this is important, why having both couples understand their finances and understand just like the basics, because they may not be with us forever. They may leave us and go somewhere else or go on their own. And eventually one of them's going to pass away, and odds are it's probably going to be the husband. So I just wanted to, it was such a poignant reminder of why this is important, and say thanks to you guys for being willing to take this on and kind of fold it into practice and fold it into what we do, because it is really important if they're going to rock retirement collectively, if they're both going to be able to do it. So thank you. Appreciate you guys so much. Talk to you later. Bye.
So glad that Erin sent that to the team and gave me permission to share it on the show. You can probably hear the emotion in her voice. We saw the tears in her eyes. This is life. This is important. We don't want, as a manager spouse, our spouse to be in that position. After all the work as the manager of the retirement plan, can you imagine having that be the end result? And obviously, as a non-financial planner, we don't want to be in that position. Totally helpless. And you notice also that her spouse died, but she lost her 2 brothers. So she probably lost a lot of her social network of others that could have picked up the baton in some way. That's also a danger that we need to be aware of. Okay, so we're going to start off with what participation should there be in meetings? Okay, what meetings need to happen? This applies whether there is an advisor or retirement planner involved or whether you're doing it all on your own. I think you should have formal meetings if you're doing it all on your own. First is they need to attend and participate in all initial planning meetings to build that plan of record. And so the 4 meetings, I'll go through the 4 meetings of building a retirement plan of record to have that scaffolding to be organized is number 1, the vision meeting. And the vision meeting should start with values. These are my personal values, not our values, my personal values. You should create yours. The other spouse or partner should create their own, and then you should discuss those. Values are the beginning of the yellow brick road. From the values in that meeting, you're going to go to goals. What is our base great life look like, and what does that cost? Now, obviously, the financial manager spouse, the one that pays the bills and has some sense of the budget, can lead that because they're going to be most informed. But the non-financial spouse needs to understand what it costs to live that base great life, and then adding on the discretionary spending of the wants that we have over and above our base great life, and setting what those goals are as specific as you're able when you're doing forward planning. If the non-financial spouse says, I want to be able to go visit my grandchildren twice a year, great. Now walk through, what does that really mean specifically? Is that every single year? What is the cost of a visit? What is the time frame of a visit? Well, the cost of a visit might be an estimate of $3,000 for each visit. We're doing it twice a year, so it's $6,000. And we'll do that for at least the next 10 years. So you want to help them as the manager spouse on the financial side as they express the things that they care about. And then lastly, on the vision meeting, you want to prioritize which one of all of these discretionary spending things that we want are most important. We want to prioritize them together, because what might be important to you might not be important to them, or vice versa. This is where we want to start to tease that out. That meeting, both spouses need to attend. Second meeting, that's the beginning of the story. So you're actually building a narrative here to help both parties have an understanding of the plan. That's why both need to be participating. Act 2 of the narrative is to go through, is our goal package feasible? And so together, you want to walk through, what social capital do we have? What is our Social Security? What do those payments look like? As the manager, you can do all the bird dogging and organization, but now you can help them see the story develop. Okay, we've identified all the spending based on our values. Now let's see what income we're going to have in retirement. Here's our Social Security, what our estimate is that it's going to be, when it's going to start. Here is our annuity income or our pension income and that estimate and when it's going to start. Now they can see, okay, yeah, we have to pay for this, and here's some income sources that we're going to have. Then you can move on to human capital and build out, remember, we're going to work part-time for 5 years. This is what our expected income is for that, so they can see that picture being developed. This is like building a story. And then you can compare. Now, as you see our social capital, our Social Security, and our part-time work, this is the kind of income we're going to have, but we have all this extra spending. How are we going to cover that? Now you can move on to financial capital, and then you can build out, here's account A, this is an IRA, this is the value of the account, this is who owns the account, this is where it's at, and you can start to organize this either in a spreadsheet or software. But more importantly, you can start to build the narrative so they can see the picture coming together slowly. Now we know what our money looks like, account by account, owner by owner, and where it's at. Then you can go to your other assets. This is what our house is worth. This is what our cars are worth. You can explore whether you're going to get an inheritance or not, or some other payout, so they can conceptually see that we may have this money coming in the future. Then you can move on to your debt, if you have any, to show this is what our debt is. This is what a net worth statement. Both of you should build this and see this together, because that builds the narrative at a very high level that everyone is capable of understanding if it's built in the right order, and we don't get down into all the tactical and technical parts of building a retirement plan. Then you can look at, is it feasible? You know, we have these sources of income and this financial, but we have all these goals. Let's do an assessment of, is this feasible? And you could actually refer to some of the retirement plan live case study events and have them watch me explain what feasible means, or what a Monte Carlo scenario means, hopefully in normal language, to help them build their skills. But you wanted them to know that this is feasible. And if it isn't feasible, let them participate in, well, what's most important to us? Is our base great life feasible? And if so, how much of our discretionary spending can we get, and which ones are most important? They need to have their voice there at the table. And then the last meeting in the initial planning session that I think that is a minimum is resilient, which is each party takes a RISA profile. It's a personality test that identifies where you're at in terms of your preference for how you get your money and how safe it is. Safety first versus optionality. It's a test that gives that, because you two might not be matched. You might be all comfortable with selling things as you need it and building pie cakes, and they may be 100% safety first, where they need guaranteed income. That is a conversation for the two of you to have, because it shouldn't be your plan or their plan. It needs to be our plan together. So you both get what you need, so you can choose that. Those are the minimums. Now, when we get into optimization, they don't necessarily need to be there all the time. So those are the initial meeting participation. Now, secondly, related to that, they should attend at least twice a year a planning meeting that refreshes all of this stuff in the same order. We recommend or suggest, this is what we do, is that this is something that's much more intentional, at least twice a year. That's where both spouses should participate because they're going to identify changes in preferences and in goals and in finances and exactly how you're going to create your paycheck. So at least twice a year, they need to participate. Now, that's a minimum on the participation end. Now let's move to what the manager spouse should do to help create or set the table for a productive meeting. I think number one is focus on the why first, not the how. As the planner, and I think of myself, I'm the planner in my relationship. I'm all into the how and all this stuff I'm thinking of. Look at this great spreadsheet. Here's a pivot table over here. It looks amazing. Let me get into the nitty gritty. You can quickly overwhelm somebody very quickly. Focus on the why first, then the how. This is a lesson I learned. You don't have to chop the onion up into a zillion little pieces and look at each cool piece. Let them peel layers of understanding, but make sure they get the big picture. And you do this by using analogies and examples to explain the concept of vision, feasible, resilient. You avoid using targets. You equate goals to actual life outcomes, which is the point of the whole exercise. It's not the planning, it's the outcome. You can create visuals. Show what's most important. Here's what we have. Here's our income. Here is where it's at. Here is exactly how we're going to create our paycheck. We like to do that over 5 years. This is exactly how your paycheck's going to be created over the next 5 years. Simplify, simplify, simplify. This is something you need to do as a financial manager. Holy Lord, man, there are so many cluttered closets out there of accounts and of strategies all over the place. You have accounts at 10 different institutions, some private, some public. The more you can simplify your financial house, the simpler it's going to be to understand, the less moving parts there are going to be, and the less opportunity for unforced errors. When you get down the optimization tactical rabbit hole and are trying to squeeze out an extra 10 basis points of interest on cash, so you have 10 different bank accounts all over the country, that's a mess for somebody else to clean up. And it's going to create confusion. Simplify your finances as much as possible. Now, what are some risks as the financial manager? The same risks I have in terms of curse of knowledge. You're so far down the mastery journey at whatever level you're at than the non-manager spouse potentially, that what you think is general knowledge is actually new to a lot of people. I deal with this all the time, is that curse of knowledge and making sure you're talking at their understanding level. Another risk is overwhelming them with way too much. Better to do it bit by bit. Another risk to the financial manager spouse, who is the main voice when it comes to retirement planning, is I call it splaining. We can have mansplaining, we can have womansplainer, we can have advisor splaining, is just domineering the conversation rather than listening and being curious. Those are risks. And also just not leaving room for input, because it's very easy for the non-financial manager spouse to partially get it, not get it, and just nod their head yes because they don't want to ask a question. And if you don't leave space, that can be missed. I see this all the time in meetings. It's one of the reasons why I love Zoom or online meetings, actually more than in-person meetings, is that when one spouse is talking, I'm always looking at the other spouse and paying attention to nonverbal communication and seeing a wrinkle of the eye, a movement of the mouth, or fidgeting with the hands to say, well, wait a second, there might be something there that we need to explore. We want to make room for that. And we can't do that when we're just all into our numbers. And look at all the work that we did. Okay, what non-manager spouses should do? Well, number one, take a seat at the table. Your voice is important. It's very easy for some to get intimidated because they've not dealt with retirement planning as much as the financial manager spouse, that they feel dumb. They don't want to ask a dumb question. And financial jargon, spreadsheets, Software can get really overwhelming very quickly, but I am here to tell you, you know so much more than you need to know. And any of the jargon and the spreadsheets and the graphs and all that is noise. You know enough about the basics of retirement planning, much more than you think. So you need to take your seat at the table. You do. Trust me. Express your life goals. Be willing to speak up if they're a little bit different than what your spouse understands. And this can be difficult. That's why we have to have good communication skills. One of the top 5 regrets of the dying is, I wish I would have lived a life true to myself. Well, that implies that you have to speak what your life is. What does that mean to you? Like with Shauna and I, we go through this, and don't tell her I'm talking about her on the show. With this move to Colorado, she really wants to be here, but she was able to express, I need to be there for my mom in Texas. She was able to express that rather than let me bulldoze and just move us all here to Colorado. So now we are navigating the in-between that is giving each of us most of what we want. So we can honor her mother because it's extremely important to her, but also we can honor ourselves and have time in Colorado. If that had not happened, we might have just been in Colorado. So we need to be able to express our goals. Ask for explanations. If you don't understand something, ask. I don't get that. Can you explain it to me in a different way? Let's pause for a second before you move on. You said this. That is actually a sign of intelligence. That's how we learn. Whenever we learn something new, we're always asking questions that are very basic. And having that bravery is how we learn. It doesn't mean that we're dumb and we can't understand it. It's just not something we do every day. Ask. It's okay. Take some responsibility for learning the basics. That's important. When you have these biannual meetings, there's an agenda. I know we provide the agenda in the club and we do it with clients, but we have an agenda for each meeting. Come with some specific questions and participate. Make sure that those biannual meetings or whatever frequency you need are scheduled. I would suggest if you and your spouse or partner are doing this without an advisor, schedule your meetings on your calendars so they just happen. And the last thing I'll say is, this is really for all of us, ask questions and then ask the question behind the question. It's amazing when you dig a layer or two deeper, you start to build a lot more understanding that might not have been there in the first question. All right. Those are some practical tips, not exhaustive, but we have limited time here. What should the non-financial spouse know? Black and white, what should they know specifically? If you're retired, they should understand the roadmap for the first 6 months without the financial manager. They should understand what things need to be done if my manager spouse is no longer with me. They should know exactly how am I going to get my paycheck over at least the next 6 months. Actually, I would say 5 years. Understand, they should know the big picture financial status. This is what our assets are. This is where they are at. This is the income sources that we have. This is the insurance that we have in place. They should know the location, the account numbers, and the type of accounts. They should understand what the feasible plan of record is, what lifestyle they are aiming for. They should understand what that path looked forward in terms of the map that was created. They should understand exactly how their paycheck will be created and what account it comes from and how that operation actually happens. They should understand where their cash is and how they can access it. So if you have a contingency fund, emergency fund, they should understand where that money is and how they get it so they're not scrambling around. They should have access to all the documents, tax returns, retirement plan of record, insurance policies at a basic level. And then here's an important one. Access to the key contacts. Who can I trust? If the financial manager spouse is no longer there, who can they turn to that they can trust, at least at some level? Who is safe? Who is safe? That could be a trusted friend or family. It could be the tax professional. It could be a financial planner or an advisor. It can be an attorney. It could be all of those. We want to know who they are, what their contact information is, what role they play, and any verbiage on how you see them fitting in. So there's context to who they call for what. That's the basics. Now, there may be more to that can be fleshed out, but this is the pathway that we're going. So what should your advisor do or your planner do if you're working with one? And I would argue that you could apply this to yourself if you're the financial manager spouse and you're not working with someone. Very similar stuff. Your advisor, whoever you're working with, should avoid jargon and avoid splaining. I'm smart. I got all this figured out. You just do what I say, and your questions are below me. You need to avoid that, and an advisor needs to avoid doing that. What should an advisor or a planner spouse do? Be approachable. If you're working with an advisor, they should be approachable and comfortable to talk with. An advisor should be asking a lot of open-ended questions and actually listening. They should be asking follow-up questions, the questions behind the questions. They should pay attention to nonverbal cues. An advisor should set the tone that both parties participate. And what does that mean? And this is the stake in the ground that we're implementing in our practice, which is, hey, we expect each partner to participate in initial planning meetings. They should ask questions during those meetings directly to the non-financial spouse to gauge understanding. They should explore directly to the non-financial spouse the wishes and signs of different viewpoints and explore those. They should expect that both spouses attend at least 2 primary huddles per year. From a process standpoint, and this is one thing that we're implementing, is both spouses should be copied on core planning communication via email, even if the non-financial spouse isn't participating. If it's core planning, let's include all parties. They should, as a default, invite both parties to all meetings, even beyond the 2 huddles. The non-financial can choose not to show or doesn't need to be there for everything, but they should be invited. And all delivery of core planning documents need to go to both parties separately to set the tone that this is serious stuff. We want you to have copies of these things. So that is the basics of what a non-financial spouse needs to know to work towards not having the experience of the person that Erin shared with the team internally. Public service announcement related to the Social Security Administration. This is not related to all the hubbub we have about offices, etc. I don't know if you've seen some of that in the news. As that settles out, because there's been backtracking, we're going to address that on a future episode. This actually is related to the WEP and GPO change that we've had. So the Social Security has already begun pushing out payments and letters for those retirees who were previously affected by the WEP and GPO, and it seems to be causing a lot of confusion with recipients. And Erin on our team says she's seen a lot of posts online and Social Security forums with people thinking it's possibly an error or even a scam. Apparently, the Social Security Fairness Act just hasn't had much press coverage as one would hope for all the retirees that were impacted by WEP and GPO. So as a public service announcement, if you have been impacted by WEP or GPO in the past, which is related to a lot of government and teacher organizations in terms of their eligibility for Social Security, you're going to know if you have or not. We're going to refer you to an FAQ directly at the Social Security administrative site. We'll have that link in the noodle that should answer your question so you know that these are legitimate. An even bigger concern that Erin shared was that for some folks that may have previously been told not to bother filing for auxiliary benefits because they would be totally wiped up by GPO anyway, these individuals need to go back to the Social Security Administration and apply for their spousal offset or survival benefits. So you may have been, I'm not going to apply for anything via Social Security because I know it's going to get wiped out. Well, all that's gone now. So I think it's a good thing to go back to Social Security to do that. So we'll have a link to those FAQs in this week's Noodle. Now I want to share some stories of people working to rock retirement in the wild. Our first comes from a listener who says, "Hey, Roger, I really appreciate the podcast and all the information you share. The challenge with decumulation is something I think about quite a bit. Having grown up in a middle-class household with frugal parents, I saw plenty of accumulation that resulted in a large balance, which was created with very modest levels of income." And he shares, below is a text message with my 84-year-old mom, and that's why we're going to keep the names out of this. He says, "My mom has over $4 million in her investment. She could easily afford a limo service from the airport, but that would be too much of a stretch for her. So I took a baby step and just offered to drop off her car. We have discussed her spending, and she has at times spent more than I think she was comfortable with, but it's a challenge to overcome a lifetime of frugal habits. The frugal upbringing certainly helped us in the accumulation phase, but now that we are a few years away from retirement, I'm actively working on flexing the spending muscles to prepare to rock retirement. Thanks for all you do." Couple dynamics there. One is this listener has done some work to see the value of accumulation from his mom's point of view, and also the downside of accumulation habits as they've gotten older in terms of willingness to spend money. This 84-year-old mom has plenty of money, but still flexes those muscles, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's all a matter of degree. And he's actively trying to help her have joy from all the hard work that she and her husband had done. Admirable thing. In some cases, with this mother perhaps, they're already happy and it's not about the extras, and there may not be an interest or desire or time to overcome those habits or to moderate them, and that's okay. I mean, that each person their own path. What I really like is that this listener has processed this and is working on flexing some of those muscles so he doesn't do the same thing. And this is not about spending money. This is about building a plan of record so you can have confidence to live the life you want, which sometimes involves money. So I wish you the best of luck. It is a journey, and you're on it, and I'm proud of you. Our next Rocking Retirement in the Wild story comes from Kathleen. She says, "I'm just catching up on older episodes in which Roger discussed possibly not having a new dog after the sad day that Sherlock passes." He's sleeping right here behind me. "We made that decision after our last dog passed. We now travel a lot without worrying, but I have a tip in case it works for you. We dog sit our friends' dogs when they are on vacation. Every month or two, we have a dog visitor and get our dog fix for a while. We enjoy the dog company, but we also are happy to send them back home, perhaps like a dog grandparent. Having the dog visits enriches our lives without having to compromise our travel plans. We just had this guy in the photo arrive today. Thanks for your podcast and all that you do." And we will share a picture of said dog that just showed up at Kathleen's house. Great tip. I think that is a great idea that we're going to consider once that sad day happens. With that, let's go get to a smart sprint.
On your marks, get set.
So your action this week is to review the time-sensitive action items that may apply to you when it comes to the month of April. So April 15th is obviously tax filing deadline or a deadline to file your extension. April 15th is your estimated tax payment deadline. We plan on having a video to talk about doing estimated taxes in retirement. We'll probably share that, not this week's noodle, but the next week. April 15th is also the deadline for prior year contributions for individual retirement accounts, Roth IRA accounts, and health savings accounts. As part of that, we're going to share a resource in the noodle about, do you need to start making estimated tax payments? This is a flow chart that we share in the club. So if you are newly retired and not used to estimated tax payments. This will help you determine whether you need to make one. And then next week's Noodle, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday following, we'll have a video that walks through the form and the process. So you can get all that in the Noodle. So this is time to review all this stuff. That's your action item for this week. Now it's time to continue the readings of Sigmund Kansler's missions in a B-17 during World War II. This is mission number 35 and 36, August 24th, 1944, ship number 339, sortie 23rd. Our efforts today were spent in Prudevice, Czechoslovakia. Aerodrome really got a shellacking today, dropped 38 clusters. Those are 3 40-pound incendiaries to a cluster. One burst of flak was the contribution of the tiring Germans. Could be. Mission, 8 hours, 30 minutes, altitude 23,000 feet. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance reference is historical and does not guarantee future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. Make sure you consult your legal, tax, or financial advisor before making any decisions.